committee of the board. One item on the agenda, discussing receiving presentation from Soil and Water Conservation District regarding the Winlock watershed.
Amanda and Jim
Yep.
from Soil Water gave this fabulous presentation in about 20 minutes at the Winlock meeting. I think you guys would like to hear it. Doesn't take too much. And Wanda, the manager, asked me, would you be willing to listen to the river update too? Because they would like to give it, so.
It's more for everybody else probably. So,
Yeah, that'd be
Sure.
fine.
Okay. Well, there you go.
So we'll schedule
There you go.
both updates.
Is that
Yeah.
at the same time, or is that a separate time?
Yeah, no,
Same time.
Together.
I mean, but I would limit it to, 20, 25 minutes,
Yeah,
something
something
like
like
that.
that.
little
fine.
condensed version.
Yeah.
Okay. Will do.
Feel free to leave handouts if they can't cover it all.
Reduced risk behavior in our communities.
As well as the contributions that we've seen
Yes.
from, the other 4-H we were talking about. So this is kind of what we're going for. This is big picture stuff when we're making plans to our. Next. Okay, so thank you for your time. We do have tickets for you guys to help us kick off National 4-H Week, which it doesn't always land this way, but this year it did. National 4-H Week starts October 6th, and conveniently October 6th is the day that we are celebrating the 4-H Fall Harvest. So each year we hold the 4-H Fall Harvest as like a fundraiser and kind of an end of the year celebration for the 4-H program. We do a meal, a silent auction, a live auction. The kids and adult volunteers help put the whole thing on. And it's just a really fun way to celebrate the program. So I'm going to give Maureen the tickets and you guys can pass them around and we hope to see you. Additionally, we asked for you to keep your radios on that week. We have 3 youth that have submitted short little snippets to Leighton Broadcasting. They reached out to us and wanted to share about National 4-H Week. And so there's 3 youth that shared about 4-H and they sent me the recordings before I was able to pass them out and they're very cute. So it's not like on 102.5 and 99, I think it's like 99.3 and a couple others, and I can like try and share them, and maybe I'll share them at the start of on our Facebook page so you guys kind of know what radio stations to tune into. But they're really cute, and I'll share them after National 4-H Weeks because they're worth seeing. So. So we'll start serving around 11 until like 1 or until food's gone. It is a beef meal this year. We've switched it up from pork, so it's beef and mashed potatoes, corn. If you're bringing kids or grandkids, there's a hot dog meal with mashed potatoes and corn and a cookie. We'll have root beer floats for $1.
Lots of fun
Coffee.
kid activities.
Yeah, it's a really good a good time. It's a little extra work, but a lot of fun to see everyone together. So
4-H building on the fair.
at the 4-H building on the Winona County Fairgrounds. Yep. So we hope to see you there. Yes, did you have a
So,
question?
a question.
Yeah.
All these great programs and everything you do, the university's always been big into evaluating the programs. And are they still really big into evaluating programs and making tweaks and changes? And
Yes. So this summer, actually, and it was at the fair because that's where we have like a large representation of our youth. We submitted youth outcome surveys to our youth if they would take the time to fill out a survey, just kind of reflecting on their 4-H experiences. And so we submitted those. They were due last week or the week before, and they don't quite have them like all packaged up in a nice way for us to understand understand yet. But we will share those with you when we have them because, yeah, they're called youth outcome surveys. So they do them for each county. And I think we had over like 60 responses. We don't send them out via email because we really want the kids to respond, not necessarily the parents. So that's where we're at with that. But basically, if there was youth bringing general projects there, we'll do that. So that's one of the main ways, especially when it comes directly from the youth, I guess. I don't know if
And
Yeah,
you
I
could
do.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I do a little bit of evaluating with our partnership programs. And I kind of touched a little bit on this, but just a general stat that I had pulled from our partnership programs were that 80% of the youth had reported that STEM was their favorite learning activity. So we've been really into the STEM and the science, engineering, as well as food and nutrition. I've seen those two program areas to be super strong in our county.
Okay. And you indicated, and I think I talked to one of our members, Ms. Moga. She's from the 861. And is there a desire for more capacity from them? Do they want you more?
Yes.
Okay. But she doesn't have any money, right?
They're community ed programs, so I'm not sure how the funds work there. But yes, I've partnered with them in the past to offer programs, whether it comes from community ed funds and partner or 4-H funds. We partnered together to be able to make our programs work, which is a super great partnership to have. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Good.
Other questions or comments? Two things before you guys leave. Thank you very much for the presentation. If there's a flyer for the meal, could you email that to us
We will
separately?
send that to you, yes.
Thank you. And not to have a long discussion, but just to bookmark it for the future. Outside of the county board, outside of the school, I worked with Afghan and Honduran refugees, and especially the Afghans. They came from rural areas and they're living in town. They would love, can we have a follow-up conversation about
Yeah.
ways to connect them with 4-H and get them
Yeah.
out in the countryside working with animals?
That'd be awesome.
They miss that a lot. So there are a
Some
couple.
goats they can come take care of.
They will actually, I know a couple girls that would love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for a follow-up
Yeah.
later on.
Okay, yeah, we'll
Perfect.
reach out. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
Order
you.
good weather for the 6th. And tell them to bring their checkbooks because things go,
Yeah, we say do your Christmas shopping. 'cause
yeah, there's a lot of
things,
cool
so.
gifts, gift baskets
Thank you
and
for your
and things
time.
like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, that's it, right? Just a presentation?
Yep. Yep.
Next item, 7.2, discuss / modify / approve cannabis ordinance. We had a public hearing on this at the last meeting. So I believe it's, unless people want to discuss revising, we have the ordinance, there's 2 ordinances in the packet. If someone would feel, we could entertain a motion to approve, get it on the table and then discuss it, or motion to disapprove, to reject, disapprove.
Well, who can summarize? They're both kind of just putting us on hold till January, end of the year, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we have to make decisions by January 1,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, the ordinance 47 disallows any cannabis use on county-owned buildings,
County.
county-owned property.
Right.
And then ordinance 48 would be unincorporated areas within the county. I'll put a moratorium on any cannabis sales. I do note in my review of ordinance 48 appears there might be a typo because it says unincorporated businesses in Winona County. I assume that's supposed to be unincorporated areas.
Yeah, it wouldn't be businesses.
Unincorporated areas was reflected in the minutes from September 10th.
Do we need to change that or?
It might just be simpler to make a motion to approve, if you do approve, with that minor modification before we
So moved.
publish it.
Yeah, there's businesses several places in this.
Just the modification or both with the modification?
Both with a modification.
I'll second them.
Motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner to approve the 2 moratoriums with the modification to change the word business to unincorporated areas.
Areas.
Yes, it's currently, the title is interim ordinance authorizing a study and imposing a moratorium on the operation of cannabis businesses and unincorporated businesses in Winona County. So I just think those references should be cannabis businesses in unincorporated areas.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Elsing.
So I just want to be clear that in essence, we're just pausing. It's really, these 2 ordinances really just pause,
Right.
basically stop everything for now until we can really get this figured out. I read through this and mumbo jumbo. But is that what we're paraphrasing this down to?
The
Yes,
first one is not a 1-year moratorium. The first one is for until we change it. Yeah.
County property.
So we change it,
But
Yep.
the second one is as long as the state allows us, which is to the.
which is really Going
January.
down the same road as the state.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Is that a fair summary?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
And it also means that the county staff, everything, like any other proposal that came to the planning commission, everything stops until after December 31st. Any other discussion?
Yeah. Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 7.3, receive public safety building task force update. I think with the amended agenda, it starts on number 74.
Correct.
Yeah, what page,
74,
75.
75.
74? Thank you.
Ms. Holte, do you want to start off, or should myself, or maybe
Please go ahead.
Commissioner Ward?
Yep.
Commissioner Ward and I and Ms. Holte and Sheriff Ganrud took part, August 6th, was it? In a follow-up meeting of the task force that's been looking at the law enforcement center. There were a number of topics discussed. I'm going to try to summarize. The city has chosen, they believe the best location is the pro-build location. Commissioner Ward and myself, I don't want to speak for you, but I think we feel that before we commit, we should spend more time looking at possibly remodeling the law enforcement center. Is that a fair summary, Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
And there has been,
And to what extent?
right.
Yeah.
And there has been no other meeting since then. But then the next item on the agenda is to discuss or approve the proposal from Klein McCarthy. Is that correct?
Correct.
Want to add anything else, or is that enough for now, Commissioner Ward?
The city seems to be, are they in a holding pattern then also? I mean, they didn't come up with any considerably new information at that last meeting.
Nope.
I didn't think
I haven't received anything for.
any further such.
I
And all
know
those
that we
plans.
just scheduled another meeting for
October 16th.
16th, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so then there will be another follow-up meeting on the 16th from 4 to 5:30, I believe.
And at that meeting, we'll be focusing on the project scope. So basically what is intended to be in the facility. So we'll start working through that process of trying to come to an agreement about what would be in a shared facility with the vendor, BKB.
But we're not on the same thought process here. They're just totally wanting to build new. And I
Understand
think
that.
this board has not decided if we're building new or if we're going to do some, and it depends at what extent of remodeling.
It also depends upon, the whole plan is predicated on another bill being passed.
Money, yeah,
from the-
where's the money?
From the state legislature, which if that doesn't happen, this plan would unfortunately not work. Commissioner Elson?
So are we moving on to 7.4? Is that your
Is
plan
that
here?
okay?
Okay.
Okay.
I was just wanting to figure out where we were in this
Thank you for
discussion.
that clarification.
Yeah.
So let's move on to 7.4, which is discuss / approve or / deny Klein McCarthy Architects Planning Study Review. Aaron, is that you leading us off for that one? And that is on page,
75.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for coming.
Yep.
Good evening. So during the building task force study, we've had estimates from BKV to remodel the current LEC. And I think that was around $32 million. And we keep going back of, should we remodel, should we build new and everything else? So I reached out to,
I'm sorry, Aaron, before you start though.
Yep.
The definition of remodel, that 32 million, that was it a complete gut and redo? I think so.
that was pretty close to it.
Yeah,
They never
yeah.
really gave very details of what was happening. They said, here's the space that you need. We had to add on because between what the space study said that they needed more space. So that was including an addition in the back that included the gun range, which is a topic
Yeah,
for discussion.
It was a very
Yes,
long list.
yes, correct.
Yes, okay, all right.
So I reached out to Klein McCarthy, who also did our current jail, just to try to, I don't want to say second opinion, but let's try to do the space study, see this true space that we need. I mean, is that limiting the gun range, everything else? Get that footprint, and will that footprint fit into our current LEC. You know, if you take away the gun range, everything else, but then get a second opinion of what is the true dollar amount for a remodel. I mean, if we're going to be spending millions of dollars, I think the quote was, you know, 22,000. Do we get the second opinion before we spend millions of dollars? So, I don't know, Maureen, you can, if you had something?
I do. I don't know if the board had.
Oh, I do have a question.
Yep.
Commissioner Meyer.
Okay, so is the thought process that this scope that the work that we ask BKV to do include the police department? Or is it the county moving forward on their own?
This would include the police department.
It does include the.
To help make the board make a decision, you know, remodel versus new. And until we get the decision that, you know, the city is not going to partner with us or want to stay in the current LEC, then that would be a different style of a remodel.
So I mean, I still see that we have the potential to end up in a situation where we don't know what we need to know, right? So if we decide we're not going to partner with the city because we don't want to move into a new building and they're determined that that's what they're going to do, we're just going to move on our own, we'll still need to have an estimate for how much that costs. And in my mind, that's important to be able to compare among the options.
Ms. Hulting and Commissioner Olson.
So the concept of requesting assistance with Aaron and Klein and McCarthy is to basically take the space program that came up with the task force. So whatever that would look like, and then to take that space program and see would it fit in the law enforcement center.
With both city and county.
Right, because in order for the board to make a decision about what is the best avenue and price possibilities, that was the only way that I could think of getting you as close to as apple comparison.
Okay. Commissioner Elsie and Commissioner Olson.
Duly noted. The question I have is, when I read through what BK, what is BK, whatever that was.
Climate.
Klein McCarthy.
There you go, Klein McCarthy.
I said it wrong. When I
Reading through this review of the BKV group, a lot of this work being done was just an assumption to me that, you know, we were going to be comparing the two, but also part of it was looking at what their needs might be for this new facility and reviewing the two. But I go back and say, if the funding doesn't exist, that's not even an option anymore. And then it comes down to, not only is that not an option, but it also comes down to this building and saying, is it necessary that we put all this extensive money into it? Are we just going to do some basic things to keep it functioning? And especially if they go build on their own, we're going to have all sorts of room over here we can throw parties in the basement. Let's, you know, I mean, there's going to be a lot of room there because it's just going to be us in there now.
although we're really not that fun, but okay.
Right. You see what I'm saying? I mean, we're going to have a lot of excess room here that now we just did a study that we don't even need to even do the study on because we're not going to be here. And we can keep files. We don't need segregated rooms. We can stick them in the old jail cells if we need to. I mean, that's the thing that I think as much as I really appreciate this, I think we just got a situation where we almost need the answer to this before we can move forward to the rest of this stuff. And we're kind of on a wish and a prayer with the city right now because we don't even know if that funding is going to be there. So we could go spend all this money and then turn around, we wasted the money because they're going to go do their own thing anyway. I don't know. We're in a bit of a rock and a hard place. I can definitely appreciate that we're going to probably have to spend some money to figure it out. We just might be spending it on the wrong thing.
Commissioner Olson and Commissioner Meyer.
And I agree with Commissioner Elsing. We have not even determined, the city hasn't determined their needs and wants yet. Their scope of the project was very wide with a gun range, with other attributes, and then they haven't narrowed it down to what actually they're going to do. So how do we have a fair comparison if they're even going to stay? And I support working with the city. I support having a co-located facility and sharing our resources, and exploring that But right now, this is spending money on something we don't know that we're gonna have.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, and my concern
I could
with
see
it,
it coming.
my concern with it is that even if we had this information and we said, well, we would rather do this, there's no reason that the city would necessarily decide to. And so then it would really be wasted
Yeah,
money.
that's,
Yes.
if I may, that's my point. I'm not going to speak for the city. I'm going to say my feeling is that the only way the city is going to stay with us is if they don't get this funding. Is that a fair statement?
I'm not sure.
I don't
It
know.
was, at those meetings, it was,
I mean, call it
that
in this
question was
facility,
asked.
to come back to this. facility.
And it's unclear as to what the state legislature money, any future money, could be used for, because right now they're saying it has to be a new facility.
And co-habilitated.
And
Correct.
not necessarily. I mean, it's.
It's a regional focus.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's something.
Yeah. And again, the definition of regional is, again, very different between groups.
Commissioner Meyer, were you finished?
Yeah, no, well, yeah, but although I do want to talk some more, so, but go ahead.
Commissioner,
Yeah, and I think it's the cart
No, no,
before
no,
the
no.
horse. You're right. At some point in time, we'll need information like
need
this,
this,
but right
yeah.
now, no, because we don't know what we're doing. Now, I'm not against, if in the short term, we need to build, I've heard one of the things that is important, and I agree, is drug, a room to keep the drugs and ventilation. But I think that can be done, I think Commissioner Olson said down in Houston County, it's pretty minimal. But I mean, if there's things that need to be done at the current LEC for health, safety, and general welfare of our employees, then we would probably allocate, short-term. I saw a contained building coming down the highway this morning, and I thought, man, you could probably buy a contained building, set it somewhere, and do all the ventilation and everything. You can probably even set it in the garage or something. I think it's cart before the horse. When the city gets the money, and that's a big if, then we'll talk. But till they get their money that they think they need to build this, I think they got bigger problems. Reading the newspaper, they got bigger problems than trying to put more on the taxpayer right now than a new building.
Ms. Holte.
So the concept was to be forward-thinking and be prepared.
Yes,
Yeah.
I get it 100%.
I had no intentions of
Oh.
doing anything until, if again, this were approved, is to not take action until we had the space program completed with the joint group and brought back, and the board saying, yep, we're ready to do a comparison. My intent was to be proactive and have someone come forward and present, what can we do for less than millions of dollars to come up with a comparison?
Yep. And I want to add to that, then Commissioner Olson, is I'm in defense of the process. It's not necessarily the city asking for their money. It's the city taking the lead on a project for it's our request, is that in order for the city and us to convince the state legislature that they should allocate more funding, they need to know that we have a plan in mind.
I don't know that I've been asked.
That we've agreed to, and how I see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the city is committed to that, but we're not ready to make that commitment. What's this phrase, measure twice, cut once, and in this case, measure twice, spend once, or et cetera, is that we want, the state legislature is going to say, has the city and the county agreed on the location, and we're not ready, and nor am I ready to commit to that location yet. This is a step to gain more information. Now, admittedly, sticker shock, oh my gosh. I thought a second opinion, I have no idea, it would cost $5,000. I didn't think it would cost $23,000 or $37,000. But then when I looked at the total cost of the project, if it's $28 to $32 million, that's not even 1%. That's
Part of their formula. It is.
Yeah, it's 0.001% of the overall project.
They figure it in.
To Commissioner Myers, we may need to do this anyways at some point. I'm not saying that I'm advocating for it. I'm just, that perspective is that the city feels comfortable with that location. I don't think the county board feels comfortable with that location because we need more information. Correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, that could we remodel the existing facility and do everything there at the same or lower price and still be together? Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Okay. And if I'm talking too fast, stop me. Okay, Commissioner Olson and Ms. Holte.
I think the scope of a project would have to consider the county remaining in that law enforcement center by itself. And how could we better use that building and utilize that building, that space, without co-location. So I don't see that in the plan. This is still planned for a dual facility using the square footage that they need. It just doesn't get me to the warm and fuzzy to vote for it. So I can't say I'm gonna support this. I'd like to see a scope of the project showing us they're alone. And then how could we better utilize the space that's left when the police vacate it?
Ms. Holte, then Commissioner Olson.
So with all due respect, I'm struggling to help you get what you need to make a decision, folks. I'm trying to provide the ability to compare what it is you want to compare so you can make a decision about, do we want to move ahead and look at only the county utilizing the building? Do we want to look at continued share facility and still look at that space program, you know, to determine what can we do with this building, our current building? Because we have some structural issues that we can't use it as is. It's not workable.
Most of it.
That's
true.
an opinion.
Well, with
yeah.
all due
That is
respect.
an
But
opinion.
Well, that-
here's my point,
Yeah.
commissioners. I'm trying to help you.
Yes.
I know.
But
Yes.
I need better direction
Yep.
on what you want.
Fair enough. Commissioner Olson and Commissioner
No, and
Ward.
it's, it's much appreciated. We really do. I guess where I was with this was originally when this came up, it was, hey, we have some things that need to be done in this facility, $2, $3, $4 million worth of work, right? To kind of get it up to speed. And from there, it's escalated to this massive project. I guess when I requested a while back that, hey, if that number is $4 million to update electrical, do this, do that, et cetera, et cetera. And, the wish list, other than the necessity, the fentanyl protection, the things that are coming into play, which I think are necessary. I guess I was looking for, is this $4 million a true number? Or is this just some kind of grab it off the wall, what actually needs to get done to keep it functional? And if the city, and keep it safe and keep it functional, that's really the two big things. And so, because we weren't in a position to go build a new LEC, I don't think it's something that, the constituents are saying, hey, let's go do this, especially coming off the jail. There's a lot of ifs right now. We're looking at the referendums. We're looking at just, levies and everything that's here. So I think my feeling is to just slow the project down. We don't have the answer over here just yet exactly what the intentions are, if the funding's going to be there. And my request was, is this $3 to $5 million to keep it functional and safe? Is that a true number? Is it an inflated number? Could the number be $1.5 million or $2 million just to make it through the next 5 to 10 years, whatever that might be? If the city decides to break free, great. We're going to open up a lot of space now. We don't need to relocate. We can keep the jail and the LEC together. So I guess my request, and maybe this will simplify it, I'm just giving you the background of my thought process, was I'm going to use the number $4 million. Was that $4 million to keep it safe and functional? Was that a real number? Or would the real number be 6 million, or maybe it was only 2.2 million? That's what I was really looking for. And that way we've got a low end as to safe and function on the bottom side. We've got a wish list over here, possibly a brand new facility or a potential middle of the road where we remodel and add on to what we have. I think we need to start on the bottom side first. And then as this progresses over here at a potential new facility, once we have more information, now we kind of have the scope of the two. So I guess I was just looking at trying to come up with a real number on the bottom side that maybe we could do a small bond or something to get it, like we've been discussing, to get it to where we need to be. It's definitely not kicking the can down the road. We'd still have a nice facility. And if they happen to leave, well, then we've got even more room. Is that a fair statement? Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Meyer, and Commissioner Olson. I'm sorry,
Olson's ahead of me.
Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, I think we need to keep in mind, this is public safety. Is a new building with new offices and everything and storage and, is that truly public safety? I mean, the public out there wants people on the street monitoring, unfortunately, the drug situations and everything. They're not asking me for and I call it a new office building, basically. So they do want public safety. And, I feel a little bit, somewhere along the line, did I miss a meeting or something? I distinctly remember Sheriff Ganrud saying what he had was just fine. It works. He was content with it. The whole process was build me a jail, build me a jail, build me a jail. So we built the jail. And then all of a sudden, the city comes in and says they got this little seed money and they're trying to incorporate us into that because they've shared space and everything. It just seems like I got, I don't know, hoodwinked, betrayed somewhere along the line that we didn't include this all in a bigger conversation, but we built the jail. And again, so now people are saying, and I've seen Mr. Ganrud, Sheriff Ganrud, kind of changing his tone a little bit, and maybe he's rethought about it again. But for me, until the city gets the money that they think that they're going to get, and I really don't, in my heart, I don't feel that that's going to be reality. But if they get the money, then we'll talk. But until we have more of a guarantee, this is wasted energy, unfortunately.
Commissioner Olson.
So in the very beginning, as a taxpayer, both city and county, I will be paying for the two projects, one project,
Yeah.
co-location. And so will my constituents. I remember Chad Ubel, the city administrator, or city manager, standing at that podium saying that the city does not want to stay in the current facility. That was done. They will not stay there. That's what I heard. That's what I understood. So why we're trying to put lipstick on a pig they don't want,
That's what I was looking to. The only way they're coming back is if this don't work.
right. So I don't know. I mean, why are we beating a dead horse?
I just want to jump in again. The city has been, this has been a good process. It's not an easy project to put together. It's not their proposal, it's our proposal. They're trying to put together a complex request of the state. And if it were to pass, and they need like $13 million, 13 million more, if I'm correct, and maybe I'm wrong on that, to make, I don't have those sheets with me, to make the proposal work, whereas the county would pay 4 million towards, so we could spend, we'll say 3 to 4 million to do basic, or we could spend 3 to 4 million and get and I don't necessarily need a brand new or shiny, not at all, but the sheriff and the police chief are crystal clear about why it's important in terms of law enforcement for a number of reasons to have that facility. And we've heard a lot from community members about it, but I think at some point the city needs to know, is the county going to go this direction? But I think our response has been, we're not sure if that is off the table. This, I think, would help get us the information to know, could we co-locate there and make a modern, not just paint on the wall and new carpeting, could we make a modern facility and through workflow changes, maybe even reduce some of the staffing if we were to combine, let's say, reception areas, et cetera. So I didn't think it would cost this much money. And even $500 an hour, that's 10 hours. They have all the information. They built the jail. They have all of BKV's information. Why does it take so long? But originally I was a hard no, but when I look at the percentage of it, and I think that we would need this anyways. I may be the only one. I think that we need this information, even though it's a big dollar amount, but I may be the only one of 5. But I think that this is necessary to get us closer to decision, because the city is waiting for us, and we're saying none of us, I think, are ready to say that we're ready to completely walk away from that. One issue I have is the new dispatch center. That is not separate from the jail. That's part of it. So if you knock it down, correct me, Aaron, it's not an easy to knock down. You can't just take a knife and slice off everything but the dispatch center. That's a
That would take some planning.
Yes, except, so that's why part of me doesn't want to walk away from that as well. I'm sorry, Commissioner
Yep.
Meyer.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of go back to how you started, and because I agree with many things that have been said. So you said, let's say that they get their numbers and they decide that it's, our contribution towards that facility is $5 million, right? There's money from the state, there's money from each of us.
Yep.
Okay, my thought has always been, then I want to know the difference between just fixing up that building, but fixing it up in the way that Commissioner Elsing described.
Correct.
Because I want to minimize the amount of money that gets spent.
Yep.
So the comparison is not with the new facility, our portion, and.
Commingle.
And.
Commingle and separate.
Yes, commingle and separate, right.
Correct.
Not being commingled over there because of what Commissioner Olson said. That I really don't think that if we get this number and we say, oh, but wait, this number for the total project is the same, but it doesn't have the state funding, but we own it, they don't own it, whatever that requirement is, that I don't know that it is what they want.
Can I just piggyback on that real quick? So what we're looking for is what they call the least cost
Yeah,
alternative.
well, yeah, kind of.
And the least cost alternative in any business situation just means that is the minimum in which we need to do. And that was the number that I was looking
Yep.
for. What is the absolute minimum that we need to do to function and move forward? Safety and functionality, and which I would identify as probably the two things we're dealing with here, right? Safety and functionality. So if we look at the least cost alternative to what's being on, if we have that number, then you can start to set every other project based on that. It doesn't matter if this is a $10,000 project or if I'm building a $25 million project, which I've done. That's what you do. It's the least cost alternative to whatever that opportunity cost is. And that's what I'm wondering. That's the number I was looking for. Can we get by for $2 million?
Help us make our decision, but
Correct. Because then you start weighing, okay, doubling the cost for the 4 million or the 6 million, and you say, hey, we can do a project for 2, we can go down the road a ways, and things might change.
Ms. Holding.
So the complexity comes in with coming up with the least cost alternative when I don't have an understanding of the purpose of utilization of the building.
And we need to define that.
I
for you.
don't know how to give you that without understanding how we want to use the building.
And I tried to start that conversation on August 6th. I wanted to try to begin
Yeah.
to narrow the focus, like what are we talking about?
Mm-hmm.
But we never got to that point. But I wanted to try to talk about gun ranges. I want to talk about indoor parking. I want to talk about that to make some things easier for Ms. Holte and Mr. Ubel to figure out what can we, and also to make it a cheaper ask. Because if I was Klein McCarthy or BKV, I have to look at both options or all these options, but unless we narrow it down, and we didn't have a chance to start that conversation, and maybe we could start that conversation. One option is maybe just to table this until October 16th.
Well, that's.
October 16th, did I say it right? Et cetera.
So I will not be here. Just-
Well,
Oh, the-
again, the city has been so focused, when they started, they were talking their own police and fire.
Yeah.
Then that got disbanded, but they're still needing to do something with fire, as I understand it.
But
And-
that's their issue. That's not-
Right, but they're thinking of how they can juggle the money and get us to pay, to come in and pay for part of it. So that last meeting, they were kind of taken back that we're even still thinking
The city was
of
concerned
why we're
Yeah.
thinking of remodeling. They thought we were all gung ho and going in, and no, we weren't at that level at all. But they thought that's what they were thinking. That's what, am I wrong? I mean, they were kind of taken back that we were even considering remodeling our
And I was
existing.
trying to emphasize that this is not meant to end or submarine the existing proposal, just to give us more information to
But
gather
they
a
had
second opinion.
deer in the headlights moment. Eyes in the
Commissioner
headlights.
Yeah,
Commissioner, Olson.
I just want to, the conversations I've had in the countryside, even out of my districts is, it's just been repeated over and over and over. First of all, the confusion between the two facilities. Second of all, man, we just built that, didn't we do that? That's the second thing that comes up. And then the biggest one is and again, I want to support our police force and our EMTs and fire department. It's just, there've been a lot of things that have happened that our communities had to swallow. And so a lot of the feedback is not very good. And one of the things that I keep saying is we need to look at the least cost option here to get by for now if we have to. And then I always pose the question, if we know there's some things we have to do, and I say that, But then the next thing is I said, are you willing to, as a community, to invest into this, possibly short term, to figure out down the road that we might have to do a bigger project? And the common consensus that I get, and I'm going to paraphrase, and we'll leave out all the swear words and everything else. Sometimes people get upset, is, yeah, because, and I'm going to say it in a paraphrased way, yes, because something else might come up after, something else might come up or something better might come up. You hear a lot of different things. So that's why I'm so adamant about really figuring out what's this bottom line? What's it really going to take to stay functional and safe? And, we might wake up 5-10 years down the road, especially if we don't get this money, and say, hey, well, we're glad we didn't do that.
But we won't get that money unless we have the city and county on the same page. We can't make a
Yes,
case
that's
to the
right.
legislature.
That's
Commissioner Olson, I'm not countering it, that's just,
No, I get it.
I hear in the community, talking to people, there is confusion. They're thinking we're building another jail, or, so there's confusion, and it's not clear. And I've also talked to the mayor, I've talked to my council people, and I've never clearly indicated that we're all in. I've been skeptical from the start. The way I look at it is, we set the scope of the project, not the sheriff, not the police chief. We tell them the scope, this is how big it's gonna be, these are the walls. But that's not the way this has worked. So we still have a pie in the sky project proposal that we don't know what the square footage need really is.
we have had conversations back and forth, the sheriff and the police chief have made, and yes, it is up to the two boards. In defense of the city, there was a joint meeting. Commissioner Elsing and Olson weren't there, so it wasn't everyone there, et cetera, but there was a vote, and Commissioner Ward voted against it. But that's why the city, I think, thought that we were moving forward in their defense. But I try to tell them that we didn't have all the commissioners there, and there's only 5 of us, so 2 being gone is a big deal, et cetera. So,
I did come in.
yep, later on, you're right, later on. Is it, and the least or lowest cost option is important. I think another data point we need is the best cost option, in terms of, as you said, you made an important point, Commissioner Elson. We don't want to kick the can down the road, and the kick in the can would be to do the cheapest, easiest. We want to do what's best for now and into the future. We had some good discussions with the Joint Task Force about law enforcement 20, 50 years, as best as we can tell, instead of just doing the simplest, cheapest right now. So we did have some of those conversations, but would it be best, especially considering
Should we table till the 22nd?
yeah, the closed session afterwards might impact some of this as
Yep.
well.
Okay, so Commissioner Olson made the motion, I'll second it.
The table is that October 22nd?
Yeah,
Is that okay, Aaron? I mean, we're not under a
Yes.
timeline with Ty McCarthy. We just,
No timeline.
okay, we're just going to hold back. And thank you for all the work that you did.
They-
together.
thank you both, really.
This is not an easy ask. Thank you both, Maria
Yeah,
and Aaron.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
So motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to table until the second meeting in October and possibly later. But we may even need more time because that's pretty close to
We
the
can play it by
16th.
ear.
thank you.
Thank you, and thank you.
Yes.
Really, I know
Yeah.
what you're trying to do. I genuinely do.
Yep.
It's just
And I think
difficult.
that this ultimately, this number is an important number to have.
It could become a very important number.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And actually, more I think about it, should we postpone if even like one, because October 16th we'll have that joint meeting. And
We'll need
we
time.
won't be able to turn around, will we, in 5 days,
First meeting in November.
if that's okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Accepted. Yep.
Okay. So we're not killing it, we're just,
Yep.
waiting for that other follow-up conversation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion table. Item 7.5, discuss/approve 2025 Citizen Advisory Committee process. So there's nobody that we're being asked to approve. This is just an update on who is, where they are in their 6-year term limits. It looked like I mean, based on what I know, it looked like a good summary, and that they're on the computer version, they were highlighted. There are people on 2, I think, on the plan, or 3 in the planning commission that are terming out.
No, just one.
Just
is
one,
Totally turned.
Oh,
They have to be- but-
Well, unless
but-
they don't reapply.
Right, we don't know if they're going to
Oh, I
reapply.
apologize.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But,
Mhm.
so that was just to review where it stands, right?
Right.
Find the process and to have the board approve
The
the
time.
process so that we can move forward with advertising.
And there's no changes
No.
No.
Any other
but-
comments?
Well, the one comment is that some people find our system very cumbersome. So we do have paper copies. They could submit the paper copy because it is
The commissioner
cumbersome.
should receive that via email once the process is approved.
Yep.
It is a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And if people can also come in here and
Yes,
sit down
fill
with
out.
somebody, because it's not user friendly.
So applications, based on this timeline, the applications will open in just
10/9,
3 weeks.
yep.
Yeah,
Give or
and they'll be
take.
open until the 4th of December.
First week of
And
December.
we'll let the people know who need to know.
Be if they want to
Yeah.
reapply.
To make sure
yes.
that they reapply, and
Yep.
we have had a policy of, if they don't answer their email, calling them.
Mhm.
We seek reaffirmation.
Yeah.
Yes.
That they are in receipt,
That they got it.
one way or the other.
Right.
And that that it wasn't just the, oop, my email address.
Sounds like lawyer lingo.
Yep. It's important.
So we would need a motion to,
So
I'll second.
motion by Commissioner Elsing, seconded by Commissioner Ward, to approve the advisory committee process and timeline. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 7.6, approve resolution setting preliminary 2025 levy. So where does that start now? Is that 90 on
90.
90,
the new?
we amended that.
Little amended one?
Yeah.
But it doesn't say amended.
Pass it around.
Oh,
I
yes,
see
thank you.
amended on it.
Here we go.
And is it okay if I ask? Oh, sorry,
Just passing those around.
thank you. This is not the.
No. The free lunch.
Okay, more information, because we needed more information.
So
Oh, reserves.
did you guys? So, can I maybe ask the board if we could maybe withhold our questions until, or how do you want to do it, Mr. Elliott?
Whichever you prefer.
Why don't you, go, give us an overview and then tell us when you're done and when you're ready for questions. How about that? And
Okay.
I have to bite my tongue too.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name's Chuck Elliott. I'm the Finance Director for Winona County. And I'm here to ask you to approve a preliminary property tax levy increase for 2025. And I'll just walk you through the summary that we have here. And then I just handed out some additional information that is also available for folks here in the audience. So I'll just start with the RFBA, the request for board action. Again, as I just said, requesting that you approve a property tax levy increase of $3,775,364, which is a 15.22.
Apologize. Are you on a certain you're referencing a certain page?
Right now, I'm on the request for board action, so for, I guess, page 90.
90, not 91.
If you see administration, page 63, it's the page after that. Yeah, you're there. That's it, right there.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Sure. And that would make the 2025 property tax levy $28,566,109. So now I'll just kind of move into the letter that accompanied the request for board action. And a lot of this you've seen before, but it helps to kind of reiterate sort of the steps that have already been taken and what's in the budget and what is not, and what is still to be considered. So
No,
what,
I'm sorry. You amended this late in the day. I copy it and work off a copy that usually comes out Thursday afternoon or Friday morning. So what is on page 91? Because the figure went up. So what am I not, what's new that I'm seeing here today? Is there something new here that rose the figure?
No, it's just-
What should I be looking at?
everything else is the same. All the pages are the same except for the changes that were made to the levy. But there's no additional material.
Went up. So I guess I'm confused.
Let's save that
Go ahead.
till later.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good question. I had the same question.
Yeah, I don't,
Go ahead,
go ahead.
please.
So the draft budget, as I think we've talked about several times now, it includes a 30% increase in the health insurance premium.
30%.
30%, yes. Capital, a request of 3.7 million in capital. That has actually come down since the last time we met on September 10th, based upon some feedback that you gave us around that. We do have contractual wage and benefit obligations. That's for our employees of 6% year over year. What is in the budget currently, again, is funding for the RAP Plus program. The distinction there is that the grant that funded that program, at least partially, has ended, so it would now all be completely levy supported. Outside agency requests at the same level as 2024. And then, of course, levy is in the budget right now is at the 24 level until you approve the preliminary levy tonight. What the draft budget does not include is new personnel requests. There's 10 of them. And, I'll cover that in a little bit. It does not include any increase to outside agencies that were asked for. And it doesn't include anything that the county administrator, myself, did in terms of just making changes along the way to revenues and expenses. And it does not include the U of M extension program or the 4-H program increase of $50,000. Now, it's included in the levy, but it's not in the budget. So it's a distinction maybe without a difference, but
Oh, that is the outside agency request of 50,000?
Yes.
That's it. Okay, got it.
Yes.
All right. So it's in there.
Just that one.
The one that's on page 92.
we took out the one that was covered last, 2 weeks ago. But the 10 positions, and they haven't changed. And again, the county administrator, Ms. Holte, and I have spent a lot of time really going through these positions, meeting with department staff, meeting with the department heads, really getting deep into how much revenue are these positions going to generate, how much really are they going to generate, how much expense reductions are going to take place, are there costs that you can take out, trading overtime for a position, that sort of thing. We're continuing to do that, so we want to kind of keep these going until we can conclude that work. And we've got 3 months before we actually have to adopt the final levy and the budget for 2025. So we've got more time to do, I think, more due diligence around these positions before we come back to you with recommendations. The fund balance reserve, I think we've covered this as well. Winona County has a reserve policy of maintaining at least 3/12 of the annual unrestricted fund balance. We do have that currently, and we're in good shape, and I'll talk about that a little bit more too.
Do you have a page with those figures?
That was the thing he just
It's what I just handed out,
gave us.
Commissioner Ward. Now, again, I want to just cover the property tax levy, and really what I want to cover here is just how much has changed since 2 weeks ago when we first discussed what it could be. So at the time, 2 weeks ago, we said it looks like it would be 20% until we do what we can to tighten some things up. You gave us some guidance, and so we've reacted to that and pulled some things out of the budget. Administrator Holte and I, again, went through this thing line by line, all 2,000 lines of it. And we made some changes as well to it and reduced the capital and some other things. So that's where it sits right now with a levy increase of 15.22%. And there was a comment made about what went out on Thursday, had it at 14.5. It's now at 15.2. And that's really just a refinement of the numbers as we go through these things. We're continuing to comb through it. I discovered some things that needed to be changed. I made the change and I said, well, I don't want to just swallow that because, I want to get the number right because we can't go up from this levy. We can only go down. So I don't want to, not give you the most accurate number given the information that we have currently. So that's the result of the change or why it was made. I mean, we go through this every day and we discover things. So now, and I think I covered it, but the changes between September 10th, when I first talked to you about this, and now is line item changes, mostly Administrator Holte and I making changes that resulted in $500,000 levy decrease. reduction to the capital, which came out of our conversation 2 weeks ago about reducing the emergency funding for the LEC to 750 versus $1.5 million. More number crunching around the staffing requests actually resulted in the levy going up because we changed some assumptions there. And then taking out the external agency, Southeast,
Minnesota State
Yes.
Southeast.
of 175. So that's a summary of the puts and takes, if you will, to the budget and ultimately the impact on the levy. We're going to continue doing this, continue working through it up until December, when we come to you for the final budget adoption and the final levy for 2025. The capital, you've seen that. The only thing difference is the reduction in the LEC emergency dollars from $1.5 million to 750. The staffing requests stay the same. The only difference there is how much we think it's going to impact the levy. And then finally, I think the additional information that I just handed out tonight, I'll just walk you through this. And Mr. Chair, I'm probably 5-10 minutes away from finishing, so just. The top portion of the page is I started to put together a pie chart of the revenue sources and the expenses by category, but then really the pie just had too many slices to it, so I gave you a table instead of the revenue. And, where does the revenue come from for the county? And by size, just working its way down to the smallest amount of the local grants of 3,000. That's the 74.6 million in revenue, and that just gives you a description of what they are. And if you're looking at this and you're going, well, what the heck is shared revenue? I provided a legend in there as well to sort of a bit of a crosswalk to explain what it is. And the same goes for the expenses by category. The 77 million, 77.8 million, and what the expense categories are. So this is just informational. Now, the next section that I wanted to talk about is the fund balance. And fund balance in government is really the cumulative difference between revenues and expenses from the beginning of time. It's the equivalent of what retained earnings is if you own a private company and you've got a balance sheet. That's what it is. And the difference in government is fund balance doesn't mean you get to spend it, because a lot of it is limited or restricted based on what type of category it falls under. So what we're talking about here is unrestricted fund balance, which means we haven't put a fence around it, or the state hasn't put a fence around it, or the feds, et cetera. And when we look at the general government, roads and bridges, and health and human services, what we're projecting is an ending balance of unrestricted fund balance of 18.3 million at the end of 2024, which puts us almost 6 million above our stated 3/12 policy. But immediately as we go into 2025, we've already stated that we're going to use about 2 million of that to pay for some capital and a few other pieces. So really what we're looking at in 2025 is probably 16.5 million. And again, that's about 4 million over our stated policy. Now, when I look at our policy of 3/12 of operating expenditures, I really look at that as rainy day, and not just bumps in the road, but like a pandemic, a strike, government shutdown at the state level, or, some really serious things that really interrupt our cash flow and our ability to collect our revenues. Those are the kinds of things that you use that 3/12 for. This amount of money that we have above that 3/12 are things that we can use for one-time expenses, such as some of the things that we just got done talking about, or maybe talking about later on regarding our property management, that sort of thing, or once in a while using it for capital expenditures such as an emergency repair or replacement of something at the law enforcement center. That's the difference that I see. So because of the amount of potential liability and risk we have with the law enforcement center, we're looking at $4 million in deferred maintenance, although we're only setting aside maybe $750 in 2025. So there is a risk that we're going to have to dig into that a lot more than we planned. So I would not advise taking that down to $12,583,000 because of that, because of a lot of factors that we've got going on right now. Plus, we haven't gotten to the end of the year. So right now, it's just a forecast. So that's my advice to you as the finance director. Now, I'm sure that we're going to probably have more discussions between now and the end of the year about this levy and what can we do to get it down. As we get closer to the year and we can pinpoint where the fund balance is going to be at the end of '24, we can continue to talk about it. But at this point in time, since we're already using $1.5 million of it to cover some capital expenses next year, I'm really strongly suggesting we don't go any deeper at this time today. The next thing I want to talk about is the local option sales tax. So that, as we all know, is going to be voted on in November. And so we've done some calculations to look at how much, if it's approved, what's that going to be? How much revenue are we going to see in 2025? Keeping in mind that the first 3 or 4 months, we're not going to see anything because all the businesses have got to recalibrate their point of sale machines and be compliant with everything. And we're probably not going to see receipts related to that sales tax until April. And, Wrap Strategies told us the same thing, the group that's advising us on this. So we're not going to see a full year worth of revenue in 2025 because of the timing and the rollout and the implementation that all the businesses in the county have to do. But we think, given that, we're going to see, if it's approved, $1.3 million in revenue in 2025. But again, that's not guaranteed because of the referendum will not be voted on for another 2 months. So we don't know exactly.
That number is very important to me. Is it 1.3 based on receipts starting in April, or is it 1.3 based on?
I don't buy that. We had to submit in state of Wisconsin, we had to submit our sales tax each month. Each month we had to report that and send a check to the state of Wisconsin. I don't think Minnesota's any different, so
But the businesses have to, I was also, I thought it could come in a lot sooner, but the businesses are going to need to increase and.
Right, but they're going to collect it day one if
Right.
it passes in
Once-
January. So I don't,
It will not be January 1.
Not until the state tells them to.
You're right. There's a process we have to go through.
Can you later on, Chuck, I think you have a number.
Some clarity.
I think it would, what it would be if we had collected a full year. That's a very important number. So 2025, the estimate's based on starting in April, so only 3 quarters, is that correct? So I think you have,
Give or
a
take.
number, correct, Ms. Holte, like based on, is there a number that you have based on what it would have been, for example, off of 2023's?
Yes. The low end was 2 million
That's a very
is
important
what we
number.
were informed. Again, that is the best estimate that they could provide us.
Which is more than what we had anticipated.
well, you can see what we're getting from for the road.
Right.
That's 3
Right, and that's part
something.
of what we're also looking
Yeah,
at.
so you just
is-
half that, basically.
And 1% levy right now is about 247,000.
Yes.
Let's call it $250,000.
Yeah.
So a 1 million increase is 4%. An 8% increase is 2 million, right?
Yeah,
Hmm?
1.9.
Roughly.
Yeah.
We projected this in 6 to 8 is what we thought would be the
Yep.
decrease.
So
That's where we were.
Yep, later on, I want
ballparking
to come
it.
back to that number. Eric, go ahead.
So again, I would, because that's not, we don't know how that referendum's going to go or, what the result's going to be. We're budgeting as if it's not happening. And I would say that because the election happens in November, we still have time to adjust after that, before we have to set the budget for 2025 in December, including the levy. So again, I would advise you to not, how did I word this? Using the revenue estimate now as a means for reducing the budgeted expense or the levy now until after the election is concluded and the results of the referendum are known.
We shouldn't assume the referendum's going to pass, not at all. Absolutely.
Yes. Now,
However, if the referendum does pass, we could in the next year assume a 6 to 8% decrease. If the economy continues to operate at the current.
Well, I don't think if we got more than 1.5, we could put more than 1.5 against the debt,
Yeah.
but we can't spend it on other things.
No,
it
it
has
goes
to- it has
strictly
to
to the-
all go towards
So
it.
the most that we could reduce, you could say you're reducing the levy is the 1.5.
No, but-
What the cost of the facility is.
Yeah,
But every year, whatever we
What it
collect
currently would be.
has to go all towards.
yeah, 100%, yeah.
So,
But
and
may pay it
at
off
$2 million a year, we could pay it off.
14.
Yeah, that'd be
Yes.
great.
Oh, that's a lot sooner than 25, and they save a lot.
That's why this is important.
Yeah,
This is
it'd be great.
very important, and it's also the basis of what I want to get later on.
if you flip the page, I just got a couple bullets to run through here and then I'm finished. So this is just because I don't think anybody's going to want to leave the levy at 15%. And so that's, you hired me for my keen intellect. Yeah. I do. Thinking about this. I just giving you a couple of options. And again, I'm sure this isn't the first time we've been down this road. Things that, as if the make good use of our time over the next 3 months. There's some things to think about, but I would encourage you to direct us to come back to you with some options of what is it going to take to get to 10 or 5 or 0 or whatever the scenarios are. But just some numbers here to think about. Reducing the outside agency funding, the total amount, other than ones we have to pay, is about $447,000. That's a 1.8% there. Just taking out the $50,000 increase for the U of M extension, it's 0.2. And I would say we could comb through the department budgets and what they're spending, what activities they're performing now, and look at discretionary, and that's obviously a soft term, but discretionary versus mandated programs, and to really get after like maybe the discretionary spending. And I know there's probably at least $1 million in the budget right now that are just a compilation of programs that we've stood up and they're still standing. And then last is keeping the staffing level flat to 2024, which is, taking out that $600,000 estimate that Administrator Holte and I have come up with for the 10 new positions that have been requested. Now, again, these are not things that I'm asking you to approve tonight, but these are things that we can consider. And if you tell us to go find some savings, these are the first places we're going to look.
Okay.
So that's it.
Are you ready now?
I'm done.
This is where you're going to.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward, I see you want to go first.
Well, there's a lot here that I'm not seeing. One of the things that, talking budgets with some other county things, have we ever done any, the vacancy factor? We've had a lot of vacancies in our positions, including yours, and we had the planning director, and we had the health and human service director, and I know there were other staff
Two
things.
county attorneys.
Yeah,
Still.
different thing. So they said, make sure that your budget reflects a vacancy factor. And again, what did I always ask, because Attorney Sonneman isn't here tonight, but she always throughout this whole year, she said she saved me money, the county, because she didn't have, because she had positions empty. So I don't know where you factored any of that in. What have we saved? And then a nice breakdown, thank you. And yeah, your pie chart would be very interesting. But we got more money from places. We got more state aid. We're supposed to have gotten more money from Department of Corrections. We got a big chunk of money from, of course, that's probably all been spent, the law enforcement money. But Department of Corrections, and I looked at their line item, and it doesn't seem like their budget changed anything. And again, we use the state, and that's different, but we supposedly through legislation, that's something that Matt Hilgard at AMC worked hard. They said every phase of Department of Corrections got more money out of the state. I don't see any changes. I didn't see it in a line item, so I'm questioning Department of Corrections. And then, of course,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
could we question that either Mr.
yeah, they
Elliott,
can check.
that, so
Where's
could
the
you,
funding
could you tell
change?
Commissioner Ward, I think in all, is this fair summary?
Yeah.
Commissioner Ward, the whole board, how much the county saved by it wasn't pure savings. I mean, our staff had to work harder and more
Right.
by not having those positions, Health and Human Services for a full year, Planning Director for a full year.
Because we budgeted for them.
Yep.
For clarification, that is more difficult than
Right.
said than done, I guess. Sorry, said that wrong. Because there are different things that were implemented to cover various aspects of
Yep.
the vacancies. And for us to go through every vacancy, I don't think
Not
you
every
realize what
vacancy,
you're
but it's the big-
asking us to
Big
do.
ones. I mean, pick out a few. Yeah, we had to have saved some money because you're telling me I can't have, in outside agency funding the 50,000. I think we saved 50,000, more than 50,000 over the years. But now you're telling me I got to put that back in there.
We need to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, and the whole
Well,
picture is what we
maybe-
saved.
Maybe there was a savings in one area, but there was an over expenditure or unexpected expenditure in another area. So I'm cautioning the board to look at
Right.
one sliver when you need to look at the whole.
Right.
Well, then you have to tell me where these holes are. Where did we, because we didn't approve more money during the year to fill those holes. Somewhere along the line, something got shifted around to cover those holes and everything. So again, nobody's come back and say, hey, I need more money in my budget. It all seems to come out in the wash.
The board has approved contracts. You just approved one tonight.
Right. But I mean, those were budgeted.
No,
Most of that stuff is
not
budgeted.
under professional services.
Which one are you?
We're offsetting those expenses for professional services by your wage line in the budget.
Oh, well, we haven't approved that one yet.
That was pulled. That was one.
Yeah,
of the-
Yeah. so-
Contract for Alex Tillman. Why? Because there was a
Right.
vacancy in.
Right.
Yes,
The
yes.
thing is, you're
So the money
asking us
went
to
there.
go back and look at all of those.
Well, then start from, I've asked this question for 20 years and I'm sorry, I've never gotten a straight answer. It's always this runaround that we never save any money, but yet it's just a budget. It's a guideline. So, and again, I don't see in here where you have to date, you have projected balances, that's fund balance, but really what did the department budget and what did they spend? And there's got to be a report or something you can run that tells me that. Did they overspend by how much or did they underspend by so much? I mean, you've got line items. Pardon me?
I think I sent you something on that yesterday or the day before.
You sent me something, but it didn't quite quench my thirst for knowledge.
So the budget report that is provided to
Yeah.
the board, all of that information is right there.
Right. So you can pull
I'm
up
not
summary,
understanding.
you can pull up summaries
No, we can't.
from last, so this is 20. Okay, I
If
guess
you want
I'm
line
not clear.
item detail, we can run line item detail.
So what I was trying to do is trying to help give Commissioner Ward and the rest of the board. I think Commissioner Ward was asking about basically 4 positions: the Health and Human Service Director, Planning Director.
The big ones, yeah.
I added the 2 county attorneys, which we did have professional services. And then I would also add the Health and Human Service Supervisor that we just had.
Yeah.
I think that for determining the 2025 budget, it's an interesting question, but not really relevant.
I think it's-
I think what I heard Commissioner Ward say at a certain point is, do you use some kind of vacancy factor? Do you assume as you're planning the salary that perhaps some positions might be empty during the year and therefore reduce the budget as a result of that?
Yeah, exactly.
I
And
think the
we've
answer is
done,
no.
we should have. I don't know how we could spend when you have a $100,000 position, not save some money.
I was trying to reduce to a manageable number of questions that could.
Yeah.
I've worked places where we budgeted for turnover savings,
Yep.
assuming some sort of vacancy rate.
Yep.
As a contra expense, if you will, that can be done.
And-
And I can provide information on what the salary savings are this year to date. But what I can say is past years, any salary savings or what I'll say is it all closes to fund balance at the end of the year. Revenues minus expenses.
Yep.
Fund balance either goes up or down. So prior year salary savings gets mixed into the stew with everything else, and it increases or decreases the fund balance, which I've given you a summary on. So
Well, I think what Commissioner Ward is asking is a valid and fair question, is like, for example, maybe I know it's, and there are professional services and there's other areas where we had to pay more, but can't you look at like what the projected balance was for the, let's say, the planning director? And then what the actual costs were? And then that's what you're looking for,
Yeah.
right? It's just a difference.
There should be saved, there should
So
be
without
savings
doing like a
there.
long analysis, the projected total cost for the planning director was, let's say, I'm making up numbers, $150,000. And then, but the real cost was $100,000. I think that's the number you're looking for, right?
Yes,
That, like the projected versus real, without going in, but
Actual.
it's important for all of us to know that there's other costs as well. But would that answer your,
that would, yes, that would start the, yes.
and not for all, but just maybe like 4 positions?
I'll send that out tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. One of the other areas that I'm a little confused to is IT. IT and their line item budget went up, and then you've got capital improvement going up, but they're in their professional and contract services, and again, that's this magic black hole, in my opinion. It went from almost 800,000 to over 1 million in the professional. Now, what did we do? Yes, I know we pay for software, we pay for everything else, but there's got to be some things we aren't paying for anymore. But that one jumped out. And then the department, I mentioned the Department of Corrections, the professional services went from like 519,000 to 812,000. And again, I was told we got more money to do corrections. Now, never got firm figures, but the legislature approved more money for us. So that's confusing. And then the whole solid waste, we don't get into that as much as some other counties, but why are we professional services of $1.1 million? I thought the garbage hauler, it should be more of a neutral. I don't understand why we're spending over $1 million on solid waste in professional service contracts. That whole area of solid waste is confusing to me. We've never broken it down.
That was actually one I had too. What
There's-
are we
there's a
spending $1 million
lot of money
on?
in-
That's a lot of, that's what percentage of the budget?
Yeah.
Or what percentage?
Levy.
And again, I don't know what that's all about, but I thought the garbage haulers,
Could you put those
Charge
in an email
I
question?
can.
And to Mr. Elliott, is that okay?
yeah, I
Those are,
can.
and
I've got and I had a few from Maureen, and she's usually good at answering them, but I don't think we got them all answered.
Funded.
Yeah, well, I think I asked a couple, but I'll check.
Commissioner Elsing, I
You
think was
did,
next.
yes.
And
I
then
appreciate
Commissioner Meyer.
Go ahead. I just, there's some,
Oh.
I might take a bit.
I have a concern. So I did get a call from someone who was kind of freaking out when they read the headline about the 20% levy increase. And I take that to heart. And I think a 15% levy sends a message that might hurt the passage of the ballot question,
Mhm.
really.
Absolutely.
100%.
I
I
do
think you're
feel
very
like
perspective in that.
I do think we need to take some efforts to bring it down. And I think there are a lot of unknowns. And there are things to feel positive about, that we may have a fairly good reserve by the end of the year, and that, maybe the question will pass, and that is a substantial amount of money. But I would like to see us be able to come down from 15.22 for the resolution that we passed tonight.
Commissioner Elson. I'm sorry, I didn't mean,
No, I'm good. So I guess some of the things that I'd like to see is we always, take this number, we bring it up to 20%. And I've said this before, and this, again, I mean this in a way that I'm not trying to be facetious when I say this, but, we start at 20, 25, we get it down to 15, 10, and then, hey, we did something good. What I'd really like to see, I always pose the question, years ago when I used to work night shift at Fastenal, and I started an ag consulting company, and I worked all day and I worked all night and lived on 4 hours of sleep, got beat into my head, lean and mean at Fastenal. Are we at 100% efficiency? You can argue with Bob Kierlin all you want, but that's what the message was. Are we at 100% efficiency? Because there's two ways to make money. You can save it and you can make it, right? So that's my question is, we always talk about the asks and the wants and the needs. But I always go back and are we truly looking at what was approved 4, 5, 6 years ago for a particular XYZ? And are we saying, is that still running at 100% efficiency? Where are some of these departments that we could be maybe eliminating some cost on top of just looking at the exponential cost of the additions that need to come to be? And how can we show these things? So again, let's start at -10 and work back to -2 type of scenario. Now we accomplish something. I'm not saying any other way isn't accomplishing anything, but that's the way typically, you start in my mind. And if we end up at +2 and it's an absolute necessary evil, then here we go. But it seems like we always start high, go low, and feel like we accomplished something. That's not just this board, but many boards I've sat on. So I always pose that question. Are we at 100% efficiency? Do we think every department is running as close to 100% as we possibly can? And what's the monitoring aspect that we can show the board and the constituents that, hey, as a government entity, with all due diligence, we can actually dive into a department, and this alludes to Commissioner Ward's thought process and what Olmsted County does, and be able to dissect that and have a little more influence as to what's happening in these individual departments to find government waste, because I'm sure it exists even in our county. The second thing that I want to bring up is the reserve. The 3/12 of operating expenditures, although I can definitely appreciate where you're going with that, to me, I just hate being cash rich as a government agency. I don't think our goal is to sit on taxpayers' money. And I would really, really love to get the second to the last line item under the revenue expense budget where it says gifts and contributions more than $10,200. Let's figure out how to do that. But the reality of it is, there's some of the things as a government agency, we know that's not going to happen. And so when they look at the reserve aspect, although I can see where you're coming from, wanting to be careful on that, I think building reserves is there as the cushion, but when you're faced with exponential rising costs, such as health insurance going up 30%, we have no control over that. Union negotiations for wages, we have some control, but we're going to find a number that makes everybody happy. So we're faced with another situation of keeping our employees happy over funding outside agencies or funding whatever this might be. So I got to disagree in an aspect by trying to inflate that reserve and really look at the reserve, what it's for. It is in case already it's designed at 3/12 of your operating budget that, hey, if something does happen, you have that money there. And then when we're not faced with such big expenses, 30% increase is a pretty huge expense, then we build that fund back up to where it needs to be. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I really see an operating expenditure reserve. So I don't think we need to have the reserve set at a limit and then bring it back down. I would rather keep that as close as we possibly can if it means points off the levy.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson.
Are you suggesting we would reduce it below 3/12?
No, I'm not saying to reduce it. I'm just saying, I don't know if we need to inflate it as high as what we are.
Okay.
I would rather run that a tighter ship to help keep the levy down. And then run off the what ifs. We have the money sitting there, and if we need to replenish it when we're not looking at 30% increase in some of these major projects that we're doing, then we replenish it back.
And I can appreciate your statement on that, but in today's expenses, $1 million doesn't go very far when it comes to, when they want for boilers or a new chiller, we're looking at $950,000 or
Roads or
something.
bridges.
Yeah, something goes down. That buffer is not much of a buffer. That a bridge or a road or a major expenditure. But I do agree that we should keep it tight.
Well, and so my comment to that was when those major things come up, there always seems to be some sort of an alternative to get us by to a certain extent. And whether we've got to take a drastic measure if and when they were to come up. And again, I hate if we were talking about a 3-4% levy right now and looking at this, I could agree to that. But when you're saying, hey, we need to set it at 15% just to potentially proceed, and then say, hey, all the what ifs that could happen, we better take some more cash just in case. That's where it gets tough for me. That I say, okay, this is risk management, and when it's your own money, you get a little more risky. And I guess that's my thing is I don't want to hoard cash.
Commissioner Olson, were you finished?
Yep.
I want to throw a proposal out, and I can't make the motion unless I pass the gavel with Commissioner Ward, and I might do that, Commissioner Ward, and maybe it won't. It'll fail for lack of a second. I want to talk through a scenario and tell me where I'm wrong, because I'm just thinking out loud here. So I would like to propose, and stick with me here, I'll set the levy at 12%, the initial levy, with the assumption being that if the local option sales tax passes, we would reduce it by that full amount. So let's say that it's a local option sales tax passes. I want to go to an 8% number so that we would drop 12% down to 4%. But I know that we can't collect revenues for the first quarter. And the difference between is 1.3 and $2 million. That's $700,000, right? So the projection for 2025 would be 1.3 million, right? If the referendum passed. But if we had a full year, it'd be $2 million. Is that right?
That's
Based on the last numbers. And if the economy goes south, then those numbers would be lower. But I would like to set the levy at 12%, and either in a form of a resolution or some kind of on the record statement as if the referendum passes, we will reduce the levy by 8%. So 12% would become 4%. How do we make up the difference of the 700,000? That comes out of the unrestricted reserves for 1 year. You shouldn't fund ongoing expenses, but once we establish the local option sales tax, it's going to be set until the jail is paid off. So I'm looking to cover a 3-month shortage with reserves. I want to get us down to, you talk about Commissioner Ward, one hand. Now, if the referendum fails, then we have some painful discussions to take place between November 5th and the end of December. We have some painful discussions because we're not going to stay at 12, et cetera. And I would also like to see 4-H included. I'd also like to see the $13,806 increase to soil and water included as well, et cetera. So I realize we can't, that's getting too specific right now, but I would like to see if people would be comfortable with a 12%, with the assumption that if the referendum passed, we would lower it from 12% to 4%.
No, how do you figure 4?
4%.
The 1.3, even if we got that full amount, that would be 5.2 points.
So the 1.3 is based on the fact that we start in April, right? So because we're starting later, we don't get the full year of sales tax revenue, right?
The 1.3 is what Chuck estimated.
Well, it'd be 5%, or it'd be 5.6.
5.2.
So I come up with 7.
But the
Like 12 minus
reason I
5%.
want to go to,
Full month or full year.
the reason I want to go for a full year is the following year, it would be approximately $2 million. Is that correct? Once we have a full year of revenue, it'd be $2 million
You're going to take the difference out of
out of reserves.
I'm uncomfortable with that.
It's $700,000.
I'm uncomfortable with it because we've been asked, if you want to get to 12, I think there are ways we can get to 12. I'm not particularly comfortable with that way.
plenty of reserves. We're like 6,
First of all, we've been asked not to do that until we get closer to year end because that's an estimate,
But
right?
right now, we're $4 million over.
So in order to get to a
reserves.
12%, right, based on in order to get to 12%, we need about $800,000 worth of reductions in the budget.
Or
So if we said, we're not going to do the staffing increases, which is one of the recommendations, except that 2 of them are revenue neutral, they should not cost us anything. So we would still get the highway engineer and the health and human services person, where we have the supervisor that has the 23 courts.
I'd like to see the worksheet on those though.
Um,
That's just,
And then we'd need to come up with a couple 100,000 more. So,
I don't think we have to do that. Because if the referendum passes, then we have more revenue.
but what if it doesn't?
Then we have then we have another set of discussions after November 5th.
Won't start out.
I want us to get down to 5% or less. And still keep a budget that is not being penny wise and pound foolish.
I also think that the conversation that we have at the closed session has yet to happen. And that's going to have an important impact on
In full
it.
disclosure, none of us really knows what that is, and none of us have talked about it, so.
And I think there's just a lot of stuff that is still unknown. You know, I attended the session today on the health insurance. And I think the 30% increase is not the worst case scenario. Am I right about that?
Well, the 30% is
Middle of the road.
until negotiations come around because we're open with all 10 for 2025. So there are potential increases for 2025 that are not reflected in the budget
Well,
because we
we're-
haven't started.
Somewhat confident that's a fair,
That's a very high number. Good Views is 7.6%. I still don't understand. It blows my
we come
mind.
off from a
different
3-year
cycle.
scenario.
Yep,
We
yep,
were
still,
locked in for
yep,
3, so
yep.
it's big, yeah.
Yeah, because they were capped. They had an even larger increase last year that they were capped from getting.
And so they absorbed it for us, and now
Yep.
we're
Yep.
They
back
just
from
had
here to pay.
time,
So-
Bill.
I think it's unrealistic. I think your expectation of getting the levy that low is unrealistic.
Tell me what's wrong with my line of thinking.
We can get a little-
$2 million a year is 8%.
$2 million. Okay, so in our budget today is 1.5 million for the debt service, right?
Right?
It doesn't matter if we collect 2 million
We collect 2 million, then we pay more.
because no, it only reduces this year's budget by 1.5. The other half can go towards the service and some year in the future,
Absolutely.
there will be a lower levy as a result, but not this year.
We will pay it off sooner and save.
Because it's not as if you can spend that money somewhere else. You're only removing 1.5 million out of the budget.
The revenue is coming in at $2 million.
Right, but you can't spend the extra 500,000. You can only.
Something else.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're-
Look, we're-
Acknowledged.
In today's
paid out
dollars,
early.
the
benefit
best
will be
we
at the
could do is about 6 points on a levy. That's what we could eliminate. At 250,000 a point.
Right, okay.
Right.
So $1.5 million is 6 points
Yep.
on the levy.
Mhm.
That's what we do. The extra 500,000 could be applied towards paying down the principal, which the realized gain to that comes in the reduction of time in which we
Yeah.
pay, turning a 25-year project into a potentially throw a spit number out there, 14 million,
Debt
14 years.
savings and interest.
Meaning that in 14 years, as we approach and we look at some of the other projects that might be done now, this is a lot more tangible or palatable to the public.
I mean, in year 15, you realize the benefit of the extra.
Correct.
And that's what Mayor Miller takes credit for, paying down the dredging of they did that
We
early.
talked about that, yes.
Yeah, they did that early, which is a good thing.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
can I have a second just to respond to
please.
some of this? The increase that we're seeing year over year, a lot of it is structural. So I don't think it's one time. I mean,
Nope.
maybe the health insurance increase, which is 900,000 of it. I don't know what it would be year 2 of the new agreement.
We have to go out for bids again.
Okay, so it might go up again. So what I'm saying is I think a lot of this is structural, so I caution against using fund balance to fix a structural deficit.
Right,
Um,
absolutely.
And the other one is,
Second, I-
if we, and I'm not gonna say arbitrary, that's not the right word, but if we set the levy at a particular percent increase without really understanding what that's gonna take, what I would recommend is that you give us direction to come back to you with some options and some scenarios for reductions, and we can talk about it and then decide where exactly you want to end up by the end of the year. Instead of setting the levy increase now, and then we come back and say, well, here's what it's gonna take, and then we're kind of stuck with it. Because maybe we decide that's too much, we don't want to cut it that far. based upon what the departments are telling us they're gonna have to do in order to hit that number. And I'm just saying sequentially, if you, what I'm, recommending is you to approve the preliminary levy as it is now. Give us some very clear direction on, come back to us with what's it gonna take to get to 10, 6, whatever scenarios, and we can come up with.
I don't think
As you asked.
I don't, with respect, I don't think you have a single vote to approve at 15% tonight.
I don't think
With all
so.
due respect.
I don't
So
think so.
that's why I was proposing a different option.
And this isn't the final.
Right, this is a work in progress. And it's incredibly important that we pass the local option sales tax. You are right, Commissioner Meyer, in terms of that has to all go towards the debt. We were saying the same thing,
Yep.
but you are more accurate that it would, you can't take the extra 500,000 and apply.
Not
it. So
now.
it is more like 6% versus 8%.
Because you're only really taking $1.5 million of,
But
out
still,
of what
and you also save in future interest payments, but that's a different issue.
Yep.
I love to pay off car loans soon, I'll pay off all loans soon, as whenever possible. But, so we need a motion from the table at some point for a proposal. I was trying to get us to one. Did you have one? No, okay.
All right, well,
Did you have
okay,
one?
so I'll move that we set the preliminary levy at 12%.
And with the assumption that if the local option sales tax passes, then we'll reduce it further after November.
And I'm not saying that.
I'm not going to vote for it. And I think we have to clearly say that if we set it here and if the referendum passes, we will reduce it by,
I think we don't know what that amount might be.
it's a hard sell to the public.
I know.
If we say that we're going to say 12% and we don't clearly say that we're going to reduce it afterwards.
And if we don't say we're going to reduce, it's not going to pass.
No,
I'm sorry.
it's
The
dead.
appetite
I don't know
for-
if it's going to pass. it.
DOA.
Yeah.
Well, if there's a chance. If you can clearly say you're looking at a 12% increase or you're looking at a 6% increase. And et cetera. I mean, that's,
Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
that's an easier,
Oh,
and
that's
that's,
6 and 0.
Yeah. 6 and 0.
I wanna
Put it
do.
on the table.
we need new insurance.
Well, it offsets the insurance. Everything else too.
So I did attend the session today. So we publicized our offer and we got 2 quotes and the second quote came in at 37 point something %. It was even higher.
Is there a second for
For the
that?
purpose of discussion, I'll second that.
I like the initial concept. I want to vote against it unless we can clearly say that we will reduce it by the amount to be saved from the referendum. To get us down to 6 or 5 or whatever %, so.
I think the appetite for the public for these type of increases is just, they can't take it.
But 12% is not going to be what it's going to be.
No, but any increase, I mean, we have a lot of senior citizens, we have a lot of people on fixed incomes, and it just, these kind of increases, it's not just, and I always look at the big picture. It's not just the county, it's the city, it's the school district, it's the townships. Everybody, puts their little bit on, and it really climbs and it creeps up. And it's that government creep. And I guess I haven't been convinced that we've ever really reduced anything that we're doing, or does it just always cost that much more? I'm not convinced of that.
Commissioner Meyer.
On the other hand, our per capita levy is $498 per person, and there are only 3 counties in the state of Minnesota that have a lower per capita levy. And the last time that the Minnesota Center for Fiscal Excellence actually did all the county comparisons, they also do a comparison based on income, considering your ability to pay your taxes. And in that case, Winona comes in dead last at only 2.8% of the total personal income of all the residents of the county, which is the lowest of all 87 counties. So we're doing something right when it comes to county government.
Right. But where you can contribute, Commissioner Meyer, is that gifts and contributions. You can throw in some money there.
And that number is due to past county boards and to our administrators. And I want, going back to what Commissioner Elson said, I want to credit Ms. Holte and Mr. Elliott and other finance directors and county administrators who none of us always agreed with, not at all. But they do not always grant requests. I've heard many staff who are upset because of things X, Y, or Z, et cetera. Ms. Holte and I don't know Mr. Elliott well enough yet, but I'm sure he'd do the same thing, ask them to justify it. So I feel confident when they ask for something that they have already asked the staff to justify it, et cetera. So that's just me speaking. And I know everyone's not at that level of comfort.
I think that's one of our most valuable assets, living in the western part of the county, knowing many people that have moved here, looking to move here. Again, I think it's one of the things we have to protect. We have to protect it with everything we've got because it is a valuable asset to this county to continue. We're projected to decline. We need to do everything we can to increase. And that's where this pencil has to get sharp because all these things are noble, just, and probably in some fashion. But once it's gone, it's gone. We got nothing else, that is a major attractant. And hey, if the west side of the county's got to continue to grow because of that attractant, because there's plenty of other places to go move to, I want to keep it going. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. So, and this discussion is happening in those cities on that part. We look at the cost of St. Charles and the additions and the increases. You look at people looking at Lewiston now saying, well, yeah, we got some tax issues there too, but I can buy a house cheaper than even St. Charles. And that mushroom effect that's happening. So we need to protect this. Kudos to everybody in the past, but that is a huge asset. That is a massive asset for us.
Commissioner Olson.
I'm just going to offer this. So I think for the past 18 years, even before I was elected, I sat in the audience listening to this same conversation. I'd like to thank you, Chuck, for your presentation because you explained it maybe the best as I've ever heard, kind of breaking it down. And I appreciate that.
This is nice.
Yeah, that's a very nice piece of paper there. And I do understand this is a preliminary levy, and we have this discussion. We're talking 2 months down the road for our final levy, 3 months. So I do understand, and I would certainly support if the lost sales tax passes, that we would reduce it by that amount.
Well, some amount, some projected amount.
Yeah, some projected amount, not your 8%, but
Well, 6%, whatever the full amount would be.
I would fully support that, but that's not our ask tonight. Tonight is to set a preliminary that's gonna go down.
Tomorrow night, Commissioner Ward and I are going to the Lewiston City Council. I want to be able to look them in the eyes and say that if this passes, we're going to reduce levy by the full, whatever it is, we're going to reduce it by the full amount.
I would say that's probably the one we talk about some of the other conversations. I would say another thing that comes up is, yeah, we'll do this, but we'll just figure out how to spend it around the backside. So I think there is.
Those are discussions. I hear you, but those
The
are discussions
verbiage
for later. Yep.
Yeah, the verbiage almost needs to be part of it. It needs to hit the paper. It needs to say, hey, the county board's looking at this. I think we can go even lower. I mean, I honestly do. I don't think we can set a budget in 2 digits. I just don't think it's palatable to the community, and they're just going to panic and say, no, we don't want any of it. So that's just my opinion.
Commissioner Olson.
No, call vote. Okay.
So the current motion on the table is to set the preliminary levy at 12,000, I'm sorry, 12%.
Yeah, 12,000, I'll take it.
Yeah, there you go.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Well,
Nay.
nay.
Nay. Motion fails 2-3. So we need another motion on the table. Commissioner Ward, I'm going to pass the gavel to you.
Okay.
I'm going to make a motion to set the preliminary levy at 12% And at the same time, clearly state for the record that if the last referendum passes, we will apply the full amount towards reducing the levy.
What does the full amount mean?
It means the projected income, plus I would even add the 3 months we're going to miss from reserves, but whatever we can from the whatever is going to come in, we're going to reduce the levy by that amount,
I mean, would you assume that it's whatever amount
6%.
Mr. Elliott thinks is safe to do?
Mr. Chair, next year, the debt service amount is $1,443,000. So anything beyond that is gonna, I'm not sure where it's gonna come from.
That's perhaps approximately 6%, right?
Very close.
So we would reduce it by 6%.
But we're not projected to get 6%.
The
We're only
projection-
projected to get 5.2.
The
based on-
projection was 1.3, you said, right? So the difference would be made up from reserves. About now we're talking 100, I lost track, 60,000.
5.84, it's 5.84. So if you took 1,443 divided by 247 is 5.84. So if you took the same 143 and divided that by, well, you'd have to do the percentage factor, I guess. So you're looking at very close to 5 points. Instead of almost 6 points.
I'm not comfortable shifting any more to the reserves at this point. Not that I wouldn't be at that time, but I'm not now.
How much interest are we making on those reserves?
It's already factored in revenue.
And what's our interest?
Factored into revenue. We have 960 million.
What percent? Do you know? Percent?
Today, we're getting close to 5%. What I've factored for interest revenue for next year is 3 to 3.5 for the
Yeah,
funds that are in
percent.
Magic, and then the 4 to 5% for the CDs that we carry.
Okay, so again, and then I apologize. What was the dollar amount? 900 and some?
60, I think, million is the,
1,000.
1,000, you mean?
No.
sorry.
Yeah.
160,000.
960,000.
is
Well,
the
investment-
proposed
Investment earnings says
income.
930.
Yep.
930.
30.
So the motion is to set it at 12, reduce it by the full amount of the levy,
Of the loss.
of the law lost, which is a
Revenue.
terrible acronym, and we're talking at this point in the
Yeah.
budget. If there isn't a second, then that motion will die for lack of a second. Okay, that motion fails. Looking for another motion.
I know my motion would fail.
Mine failed, why not?
Yeah, just give it a go.
Well, the discussion I have is, is it the verbiage of saying something would decline if the referendum passes? Is that the issue on that side?
Mine, yeah.
Or yours?
Yeah.
And Commissioner Olson would,
No, I would support, I fully support. I would have the expectation. I would put my hand on a Bible and say, yes, it would. I don't know what that amount is.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say now what
Can we
that
take-
amount would be.
Okay, could we say it by the full amount of the revenue?
Well, we don't know what that is. That's the
The
problem.
projection
We've
is,
got a
the
projection.
projection is, the whole budget is projections. It's 1.3 million.
It's a guesstimate,
And
yes.
that's not even including the first quarter, which we
I mean,
can make up.
what I heard Mr. Elliott say to us is, give us a percent and we'll go figure out the best way to get there. And that's really not what we're doing.
We need to be able to look people in the eyes when
If
we're
we
trying
want
to,
to sell this
if we want to pass this.
referendum.
I spoke in Goodview last night and I got 2 questions. And I think the sheriff got the same
He
feedback.
did, yeah.
Is that people need to know that if this passes, the levy will go down. And we need to be able to tell them
but I
clearly.
think we need to start the levy lower. I don't think we can be in double digits. That's my thought process to it. I don't mean to be the hard guy, but you throw a levy out in the double digits and people are going to panic, even if there's a promise on the backside, because guess what? The promise may not happen.
Right.
And now here we sit.
Yep.
That's the thing.
And we got government creep. It always creeps back in the dollar amount.
Commissioner Olson?
What, the other day, the headline was 20%. Now now the preliminary ask is 15.2. So it will go down, but I think the direction is clear. But we have a preliminary that we have to start somewhere. And I mean, we could, if you're gonna say 9% and make a motion for that, then I guess I would hope that we have a direction on what to cut. And because that, I mean, we can say whatever we want, but if it's not realistic, the rubber hits the road, we gotta say, this is what we're cutting.
But the new jail saved me. I was sold on the bill of goods that the new jail was gonna save me
Commissioner
money.
Elsing, were you, I'm probably putting words in your mouth and stop me, setting a preliminary levy at 9% and applying all of the levy savings?
No, I'm throwing that out for discussion. And my honest feeling is that, I'd like to get to zero. And I think we could come close to doing it if we pass this referendum. I mean, that's where I'd like to be. So why not? Why not try to get as close to that as we possibly could? Is it possible? I don't know. I firmly believe that we've got to have some sort of a promise to our constituents that we're going to do that, because I think that's probably one of the big things.
0% is not possible because isn't just the health insurance alone 3 to 4%?
If we pass the referendum, it could be 6. That would be your 5 points or whatever it would be. And like I said, get as close to zero as we possibly could.
I'll make a second motion that might also fail.
Okay.
The motion is to set the preliminary levy at 9%, and if the last referendum passes, to apply all the savings to it in order to lower the levy by that full amount.
For the purpose of discussion, I will second that.
Thank you. You're in charge. So.
Yep. Great discussion.
I hear silence from Maureen and Chuck, so.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about at what point do you want to be told what that is?
What that would look like? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get us to a levy. I'm sorry, that's not my ideal number.
It's September and it doesn't end till December.
Mhm.
There'll
But
be a lot happen.
we have
between-
discussions to have
I
with a
know.
lot of
Well,
community groups.
among the things that Mr. Elliott gave us on a sheet, we would say, we're not going to have any staffing increases. There's 600,000. We're going to ask them to go back and try and find other money in the budget. We need to get there, that's how much? 247,
Yeah, if you took,
you got it?
yeah, I mean, if you took the $1 million, that's 4% plus the 2 and the 2.4. So you're, roughly in that 8.5% right there. If you took everything on that options for reducing 2025.
So we're at 15.22. So we want to go to 9, that's 6.22.
So if you took 15.25 minus 8.5, you're looking at, that's 6.5%. The levy passes, that almost dissolves it.
So we got to get rid of $2.2 million worth of expenses?
And or spend reserves. That can be
Yeah.
spent on a one-time basis.
Yeah, but,
A dumb
I
question.
mean, here's some of the things I think about, right? So we need a new plow truck. That's $308,000. We're going to still need a new plow truck, even if we don't buy it this year. We're going to have to surface the Utica and the Nodine parking lots. We're still going to have to buy an ERT command trailer. I mean, those things are things, when Mr. Elliott said they're structural, those are things that in order for us to maintain the roads, we have to have.
But that's keeping I thought we had most of that factored in to the existing expense, because we're not asking for an increase. That was flat.
No, there's the capitals taking out of reserves. We're still having to buy those things.
1.5 million.
So the levy, 230,000 is coming out of the levy for capital. But that's a big item in there is the courthouse roof.
Yeah, that was one side, but I mean, as far as the plow trucks and everything else, that was part of the existing ongoing budget. There was no increase in the levy on that side. The only increase was these other the courthouse roof and some of these other things that, correct?
Would be sort of like saying, in order to pay for the health insurance increase, we're not going to buy a plow truck. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
The expense is still there, so we have to find reductions.
we have to find reductions.
Correct.
And if that we take out of, yeah, that, definitely, you get it.
Commissioner Meyer, remind me again why you're opposed to simply stating that we'll use the full amount of the loss to reduce the levy.
Because I'm not comfortable that we know the exact amount, and because we were asked not to take more out of the unrestricted reserves at this point.
You're willing to risk losing the referendum because you don't want to go into reserves.
By a few $100,000.
And reserves exceed the
And we're
3/12.
4 million over on reserves already.
I don't have that good a
and-
feeling about the
and how-
referendum
how
this
has the
time.
reserves
There's
changed
no
over the
chance in
years?
heck if we can't make it clear.
We've always kept a very healthy reserves, I think.
Say always, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's always been enough of a cushion. I mean, we've never gone below the 3/12 or even
We've gotten close.
close, but we've never gone below the
I
operating
might,
cap.
I mean, I might be more comfortable if, we paid good money for a consulting company who told us to not say this. They said to say it would reduce the pressure on the levy. And since I paid for the advice, I mean, I kind of like to go by it. So if what, I mean, I do, if it does pass and we have the ability to reduce, I sure as heck do want to do that. That's absolutely right. But many things can change between now and then. So I mean, I'd be willing to go as far as what I just said, but not that much further. That's my deal.
So the
Trying
current,
to build a trust factor with the public, though.
I
And if
get
we
you.
don't give them,
I
if we're
get you.
wishy-washy about it, they're not gonna trust us. I think the trust is,
one of the two questions I had last night
Yeah.
was about that.
the trust is kind of shaky right now, I think.
Well, I look at it this way. If we pass this with some sort of verbiage in there, I guarantee it's going to be in the paper. People are going to see that. And they're going to say, oh, this actually could go down. We need every bit of an exposure for the benefit of our constituents, that they understand what this is truly about.
And when
And if
don't
we
have-
leave
yeah.
that, if we omit that piece out, it's just another opportunity to educate. And if we've got to put it in a motion to educate, I'm sure there's fine people that work at the paper that know how to write good articles.
And I want to give Chris, I want
I
to
mean,
give,
really fine people.
I mean, I want, speaking of that, Chris Rogers did a great job at the Post, the one and only story. I think what the recent story did a great job, but we just need, it's still not on people's radar. Most people don't know about it. Last night, Goodview City Council members didn't know what it was about. And I told them that I saved them the long slideshow. Here's a one pager. Yeah. So there's a motion. I'm sorry, Commissioner Ward is
just-
running to take that, this
In
portion.
reference to that, I passed this along to Maureen. I took 2 phone calls the other day from people that are well-informed in the community, that were early voting,
Mhm.
that had no idea.
Yeah.
And that scared me, because there are a lot of people early voting.
That's why we needed to get out and start talking about this. And the county staff needs to not advocate, but inform people about it as well, too. Not these folks, but the other staff.
So I don't want to give a false pretense. I certainly would support reducing it by the amount if it passes, and I would say so much.
The current motion I made was
Yeah,
to set it at 9%.
9%.
And to reduce it by the full
Full
amount
amount of the sales tax
levy. Yep.
collected.
We call that question perhaps.
We ready to vote? Call the question, okay? Yeah, all in favor of the motion of 9% with reducing the levy, the full amount of any lost referendum approved. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay?
Aye.
Aye.
Well,
Nay.
I said aye.
That one's failed
Three?
too.
What?
Two,
Oh,
three,
Oh,
four.
I said aye. I didn't say nay. I said aye.
Okay, so three,
I was counting aye.
Oh,
3-2, that passes,
that passes.
3-2. Back to you, Dwayne.
So who are the nays?
nay.
I'm a nay.
The preliminary levy is set at 9%. If the referendum passes, we will reduce it by the full amount possible. And then we can clarify what happens if it doesn't pass later on.
No,
Yep. Well, that's what he
That's what you
projected
said.
with 1.3 million as of now.
Right.
and
As
if it changes?
changes, yes.
But now, and I appreciate all that conversation and reducing with the loss, but 9% to me is still way too high. So do I come up with my list of things to look at?
Yes, we'll have to later on.
Okay.
But I think we also need to add and advocate for this referendum to pass.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. I think I was the one that wanted it.
I
to
feel-
start with.
I feel for the sake of moving forward, we had to come up with something.
Yep.
Because I think we're going to be at a stalemate.
Well, we're forced to.
We're forced to do something. So sometimes you have to, even if you don't necessarily like where it's at. Like I said, my goal is to get to zero, but to move forward and continue, we have to do something or we're going to be here indefinitely. So.
And or to midnight. Commissioner Olson.
And I do want to offer that, based on the preliminary ask and what we just voted on, we're going to make some hard decisions
Yes.
sitting here, and real hard.
I agree.
It's going to affect people and programs. So we need to know that.
Well, Attorney Sonneman isn't there tonight. The wrap is 170,000, but I think, pardon me?
I said, well, it's one of those things that is not a mandated service.
Right. I mean, we got to look at those
And
things.
Seriously, commissioners, you need to know you're gonna have some really hard decisions to make.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
we're not going
This
to be the
is setting
favorites.
it at a level that I really don't think there's a clear understanding of the ramification.
Next item on the agenda was item 6.3, approved resolution to establish various ballot boards. Ms. Wilbright, do you want to start us off with that, please?
No, I apologize. What page is that on the amended agenda?
74, no,
30?
Yeah,
you're right,
early.
you're right.
Yeah, because it was under.
32, I think. It's 32, I think.
Okay,
What are we at? Oh,
I think it's 32.
one that you pulled.
Included simple statutes in there, but I printed out the ones that are important.
Thank you.
There's the appendix, was not in the original.
Lucky I got some proofreaders that go through my agenda long before I do. Appreciate those people.
I think it's 32. isn't it?
Sounds about right.
So the appendix A was not on the original agenda, so I passed that out. And I've also passed out a few of the statutes that I added in addition when it was amended today. The highlights of those are 203B.121. They're, you guys are in charge of establishing the mail and absentee, regular absentee, and then 203B.123, where I'm in charge of establishing the RCAVA for military and overseas absentee ballot boards. Historically, Winona County is just that one absentee ballot board for all of those functions. And that is what the resolution and appendix A is intended to do. If we look at 204B.21, which is that last page of the little packet I just gave you. Your ballot boards are to be set just like election judges, and we get a list for the parties turning the list of that's made first each year. Then that list is sent to me and I furnish it to the clerks for appointing election judges. Now, in election judges, they have to go beyond that list most of the time because there's not a ton of people on it. But because they only have to go by the judges that are in their precinct. But as a county as a whole, there's 150 some, 158, 159, I don't recall the exact number of individuals on that list. I invited 10 from each party. Our major political parties are the Republican Party and the Democratic Farmer Laborer. I invited 10 from each party and 7 from each party got back to me. Those 7 individuals from each party are on this list, along with myself, my deputies. It's important that my deputies are part of the process because we're the ones that are going to answer the questions when there are questions. They aren't going to go find the ballot board at home and ask the questions. Those questions are going to come to us. So it's important that my deputies are on that ballot board along with them. Go ahead.
Quick question with that. Is it statute or is it just common courtesy that usually, this is a genuine, I'm not trying to cause any controversy. I just was curious. Is it, if we would have received, there's 18 on here, so if we would have received 9 and 9 from both sides, isn't it typically last resort that a county employee goes on, or would we have taken?
Especially for Uokava, if you want last resort, the county goes on, I will have a separate Uokava ballot board because those have to be processed immediately. I don't have election judges on hand all the time.
So what you're saying is that if you're going to have a determined amount of employees that are going to be on these boards no matter what, and then what's ever left over is what the parties get to delegate?
No, we watch the ballots that come in and try each day to check and make sure that we do ballot board as frequently as possible. We have to do it every 5 days until we get within 2 weeks of the election. Then we have to do it every 3 days. I have election judges on call Tuesdays and Fridays, depending on quantity, as well as election judges, not county employees. If it comes to signature verification, that is a task election judges alone can do. So if we came down to something, what requires signature verification is if a voter put their last 4 of their social on their absentee ballot application and they put their driver's license number on their signature envelope, then we can't verify it through SVRS, then it would come down to signature verification. That is a task that has to be done by a party balance of election judges. So I set up a schedule Tuesdays and Fridays for those judges to be on call if there's an excess of ballots, or if those tasks need to be done. And then Saturdays, the 2 Saturdays prior to the election, I will have 2 teams of election judges plus 1 team of my staff processing the absentee ballots because we can start opening them 18 days prior. Nothing is calculated.
I guess maybe I didn't state my question right. What I'm asking is, it's on Appendix A. What I'm understanding is that even if there was more people brought forward that wanted to be on the ballot board members, you're saying that yourself and a certain amount of staff automatically be on there.
We will, yeah.
Is that three staff or 4 staff?
Yourself,
It's myself and 3 is what I have.
So
Okay, that's the top of
automatically
the
4
list.
people outside of government employees, or automatically 4 government employees are on this, only leaving room for 14 people.
I wouldn't say only leaving room for 14. I did invite 10 of each party. But
Is there a minimum?
there's a party balance of election judges, so at least 1 of each.
Okay.
If we need any of either signature verification or once we get to opening envelopes, if any ballots need duplication, say they crossed off an item instead of asking for a new ballot, we can duplicate that for
Does the staff have to declare their party?
staff. That's not to declare their party. They
And-
cannot.
And why is that? That's a burn with some of my
Yeah.
constituents. Why-
Yeah, because
and
it
I
can
don't know the
lopside the
answer.
board pretty easy
Yeah,
if it could be one way or the other,
Yeah,
either.
why don't they have to declare? Because it says in here that individuals have to, but why do not staff? And I can't answer that for them. But
Yeah,
it is
and
a-
it just, it gives a lot of power to weight a board, I guess, when we do that. That's would be my fear. Is there any way that we could operate with maybe less than that? You know, I'm just genuinely asking.
The,
How to answer the
when
constituent
questions come up about elections.
Yeah.
My staff need to be in the loop because they're the ones answering the questions. I have a teeny tiny staff. To be completely honest, I mean, with the budget that you just approved, we can't get all of our statutory requirements done. But with this teeny tiny staff, they need to be in the loop because we are.
No,
the
we're
ones
not,
answering
we're not
questions.
denying that, but again, my constituents are asking, why don't staff have to declare their party? As an individual election judge, they have to. And again, they're not understanding why a staff member who is a voter, who is an individual, doesn't have to declare. I mean, I don't know why they. I
Do
can't
they
answer
have
that
the option?
question.
They just, so my question would be, do they have the option to declare, but they also have the option to not declare?
Some counties would have their staff declare. Given recent lawsuits, and feel free to jump in, but this question's come up at the conferences, et cetera.
Yeah.
Do you have your staff declare party? Do you not have your staff declare party? And it goes both ways between counties. The fact that we're differentiating between having party balance of election judges do any of those signature verification or ballot duplications. It's because party balance is, or party affiliation is not public. So I could tell you that they declare their party to me, but you have no way of proving that. I feel like we're not getting anywhere. So just leaving it black and white and these are the staff, these are the party balance of election judges. Those individuals are only doing this, not only, they have other roles too, but when it comes to signature verification or ballot duplication, that's only to be done by a party balance.
But the trust in the public is in you that it's a balanced board. Right. So
I mean-
we have no way to, we don't know what anybody on there technically is to an extent, right? But the trust is the person that's in charge does. And so when nobody is declaring that to you, even if it's a government employee, that's the transparency. The transparency doesn't reside to the public. It resides that you and your position are aware of what's on that board, even if it isn't public knowledge, because you're an elected official to say it's your job to ensure that that's happening, even if it isn't public knowledge. So it is transparency in government, even if it's protected information. That's the question at hand.
Okay, I could ask my staff to declare a party to me. My hesitation with that is that we run elections and for me personally, I don't tell anybody which way I lean. There's lots of speculation, but I'll never confirm either way because I need to be neutral because we run the elections. And I don't have any public political opinion and I extend that to my staff. If it would make folks feel better to ask them for party affiliation and I make sure that they're paired up accordingly, I can do that, but I'm hesitant because when we run elections, I feel we need to be neutral.
Yeah, I do too, and that's the point of this is to make sure we're neutral, to make sure it's a balanced board and the public knows that even if the public doesn't know, they put their faith in a public servant to make sure they know. That's what I'm leaning towards is to be sure that we might not get 7 and 7 next time. And if we've got 4 individuals that you're mandating be on that board, and they're all one way or the other way, that could influence the public's perception as to, is this truly a fair ballot board? So
Okay.
again, it's just part of that transparency that if you have the power to set the protocol, either for it or not for it, then you also have to be accountable for that decision and the public perception as to what your say is. And that's my thing is they don't have to disclose it to the world just the same as the rest don't, but they should disclose it to you to ensure that, hey, this might put us in a position where we don't have a balanced board, an unbiased board, exactly what you just said. So that's my point is if the power lies within you to ensure that that happens and the information never goes beyond you, then the disclosure of that information, whether you go one way or the other way, you don't have to admit that to anybody, but you do know how it balances the board out. Does
Understood.
that make sense?
Yep.
So as a public servant, the information isn't disclosed beyond you, but the constituents, because you represent everybody, need to know that you're running it in a fair manner. So I would heavily suggest that affiliation and party affiliation, although privy to just your knowledge, that I would suggest you take a stance that you are asking them, if it's legal, to divulge that information, including yourself, although you don't dissolve it, you're not telling anybody else, but that is part of the equation that we've hired you to make sure it's balanced.
Commissioner Olson.
Correction, you haven't hired me. I've been elected to do
Or
this.
elected, excuse me, but you're getting paid. Correct.
Chelsea, I have full faith in how you run the election and that you follow the statutories, and I haven't heard any perception of anything wrongdoing regarding this.
I'm not saying there is, this is the
I
question.
haven't heard it. So I would support what you brought forth.
So currently there are 7 Democrats, 7 Republicans and 4 staff in
Correct.
essence, right? And we have to, and it is true that Ms. Wilbright is not she is a independently elected official
Right.
in the future voter to choose someone else. But
Right.
so, but Commissioner Elsie made an important point. If there was, let's say, 7 Democrats and 10 Republicans or vice versa, but your goal is to always have a balance, right?
My goal is always to have a balance. And when I bring in the election judges,
Yep.
especially like anytime I bring in election judges, I make sure I have
Right.
a party
You
balance.
wouldn't have-
No.
7, but we don't know where the other 4 sit,
Mr.
and
Chair.
that's where that's an issue.
Commissioner Meyer.
I move to approve the resolution. to
Second.
establish the ballot board.
Further discussion.
And my point was not so much to discourage this current ballot board, but it was clarification for myself to understand it. What you are procedurally putting into place for all the constituents in the county, your view towards it, how you look at it, just so that I can answer questions as they come up. There's no doubt there's been a lot of talk about unfair ballots and, cheating and whatever else it is. So the more information that we can expel to people about how you're operating it and their perception of that, the better, I think.
Right.
That's transparency, and it needs to happen.
And there are also tests to test for if it's fair and accurate, which the public's always has been welcome to come in and view.
Yeah, so I just would encourage
It's
you to do
also on
everything
us
you
to
could.
Let the public know that
Yeah.
we have a sound system, which should be fair and balanced.
Yes. Commissioner Elsie made very good points. I think Ms. Wilbright is elected, which is, I firmly believe should be an elected position. But I think we're asking for transparency and again, trying to build that trust within our government.
Correct.
We have a hotbed of people watching. We're blessed or cursed.
And
We
it's
have that-
growing.
Yeah, we have that hotbed. So we just need to keep as transparent and open as we can to quelch any, rumors or anything like that. But I think you're doing the right job. Yes, thank you.
So is that okay? Call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Wilbright.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda was formally 6.1, approve professional service agreement with Karen Kelly.
Yeah, just the question, we've had a number of these, so have the old agreements, how many special professional service agreements do we have in the county attorneys? We had, I think this is maybe the 4th one, so did those other contracts expire? And this is just a new one?
I'm not trying to remember all of them for sure. Mr. Tillman, who we did a professional services contract with,
Right.
now works for the Wisconsin AG's office.
Right?
I believe there was one for Mr. Jackson. To
I
my
remember
understanding,
Jackson.
I'm not obviously County Attorney Sonneman, but to my understanding, he's done very little, if any, work for the county. So I don't think there's been much, if any, funds expended.
Savings.
I'm not sure if the other two, if I'm forgetting someone that I should be remembering.
So,
Bruce Nelson is.
Oh, Bruce
Yeah.
Nelson, he let his license expire in July or end of June, so he's no longer helping us. He was doing a lot of contract work for us, or
Okay.
helping a lot with contracts.
yes.
And the fourth,
There's one that's doing criminal.
So we're no more, but we're maybe down?
Oh, yeah, sure,
One.
we're still down.
Okay, all
And
right.
they're, yes.
I believe the intention of Attorney Sonneman is for Ms. Kelly. She used to be the county attorney in Wabasha County. She's well versed in criminal law. We still have a backlog of criminal cases because we've been down attorneys for so long. Was that primarily she'll be involved in that area of the office.
Just a question.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
We can have discussion. Motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Meyer. Discussion, Commissioner
Yeah,
Olson.
just a quick question. So the idea of some of these professional contract services, it's more ad hoc. It's to line up a couple people that if the situation were to arise, we might turn to a specialist that would be on, not necessarily even a retainer, but just might be there. Is that part of it? Or
I
in
guess
case
that's part
one
of
gets
it.
hit by a bus and we got backup, or I mean, I'm just trying to
That would be a
understand.
benefit to have if one of us did have a medical leave or something, that we have someone that's experienced. I don't want to add like I'm speaking for Attorney Simon. She's obviously the elected, so she has the final authority for office. But I do think that the intention is to help out where we need it, but not have someone that's coming in doing 40, 60 hours a week with that expense. I think it's where we have the deficits to help us as a whole of office keep up our
To
work.
help
I'm just
address-
trying to understand the intention behind
Yes.
it.
help
That's
address the backlog.
And I get that. I mean, hey, if we can have somebody on some sort of a, per se, free retainer as an expert. Okay.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So then,
Tell Attorney Sonneman, I want a running list of these and when their contracts are
So-
done.
so do we adjourn and then come back?
Still
We've got
comments.
committee reports.
Thank you. I'm sorry. You're very correct. Commissioner Elsing,
Just to say, move the meeting, I'm gonna.
Commissioner Ward,
Yeah, I just been asked by several constituents and we just went over our committees is future board action to discuss the possibility of making a finance advisory committee.
Or what are we trying to accomplish?
Well, our budget is the main item that we have, and maybe to have some more eyes looking at different aspects of it, investments and things like that. I'm not 100% sure, but I've been asked by several constituents to consider it. And so again, we won't discuss it here, but we could discuss that at a future meeting, and I can get more clarity from the people who are asking about it.
I could see the need for it, and I could see why. I mean, we've discussed trying to dive in a little bit better. It's a lot to try to understand in a short amount of time. There's no doubt about it when you don't work in it every day.
Sorry, you might.
For the sake of looking into it, I'll second.
We need to.
okay.
Thank you.
Is that it, Commissioner Ward?
Yes. Oh, well, it's harvest season and please, people be aware of implements on the road and everything. Some of them have great signals and turns and everything, but yeah, just be cautious of traffic with the harvest season and be safe.
I just want to add, is that it, Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
I just want to add, whenever possible, if the county commissioners could ask to talk to civic groups, other organizations about the referendum. Commissioner Elsing mentioned he's lining up conversations with a number of different city councils or others in his district. Commissioner Ward and I are
Playing.
going to Lewiston
Yeah,
tomorrow, et
And I'm
cetera.
playing phone tag with a few other.
Thank you. So with the other groups that that we know of, let's try to help spread the word because it's, everything is just the presidential race, which is too bad. We need to have more discussion about these local issues too. And thanks to Commissioner Ward, the lottery. Commissioner Meyer, what was that?
We won.
Yeah, we won the lottery. We can reduce the levy.
Otherwise, I think that's it. Then do we adjourn and then?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion table by Commissioner Elsing and second by Commissioner Meyer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. We will then take a break and then go into a closed session. Is that correct?
Yes. Right here.
You gotta state it, don't you?
Okay.
Pursuant.
So pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13D.05, Subdivision 3C3, to develop or consider offers or counter offers for purchase or sale of real or personal property at 121 House Street. That's the purpose of the closed session. We'll take a short 5-minute break and then we'll reconvene in the room next door. Thank you, everybody who joined us.